can see that. Okay, so let us read Matthew chapter 8. Matthew chapter 8 verses. First of all, we need to read verse 18 first, and then verses 23 to 27. Okay, Matthew chapter 8 verse 18. Let's read it. When Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side of the lake. Okay, and then there was a story about those two disciples asking for following Jesus. We learned about last week. Then we are moving on to 23 to 27. Okay, let us read those verses. Then he got into the boat and his disciples followed him. Suddenly, a furious storm came up on the lake, so that the waves swept over the boat. But Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and woke him, saying, "Lord, save us, we are going to drown." He replied, "You of little faith, why are you so afraid?" Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed and asked, "What kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him." Okay, so now in this story, we have Jesus and his disciples on a boat crossing over this Sea of Galilee. Before we read verse 18. What happened before? Jesus was doing his ministry in Galilee, and then a great crowd gathered around him, right? And then Jesus casted out demons. Jesus healed the ill, the sick people, right? So the huge crowd around him and his disciples. And then now Jesus commanded them to cross over the Sea of Galilee, going to the other side of the sea, which is Gerada. Okay, and that reason is the Gentile territory. Okay, that region, that territory is well known of growing unclean pigs and the land of Gentiles. So when Jesus and his disciples are going over there, no one will follow them because the land is unclean to the Jews. Now Jesus and his disciples, they are boarded into this boat to cross over the sea. And then when Jesus got into the boat, he fell asleep because he was so tired because of all those continuous ministry and all those huge people around him. So he was so tired and then he fell asleep. What happened next? Suddenly a furious storm came up on the lake. The Sea of Galilee was well known about this sudden storm. Why? The sea was surrounded by huge mountains, so the air was climbing up to the mountain and then coming down suddenly. So the air coming from the mountain, top of the mountains, making the sudden storms in this sea. You know, what was their job? What was their vocations? Jesus' few disciples like Peter, James, John, and Andrew, they were fishermen. They knew about this kind of storm very well. So they are seasoned fishermen. But you see, they tried to do everything they knew, but they could not overcome this storm. Look at that. At the end of verse 24, it says, the storm came up on the lake so that the waves swept over the boat. But Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and awoke him. Okay? These disciples, they could not understand the situation they were in. Jesus is there with them together. They are in the middle of this amazing ministry. What kind of man who Jesus is? According to what they observed by now, Jesus is the one who has the authority to cast out demons, heal the sick people. He had that much power and authority. But here, Jesus is in the middle of the boat, and the boat is in the middle of this, scary storm. And then they're saying that, Jesus, save us, we are going to drown. They are facing this kind of unexpected situation, okay, in the middle of which they are perishing. So they caught by this fear. They began to wake him up. Jesus, save us. We are going to drown. And then Jesus replied. Jesus woke up, and then he saw these faces of disciples, full of fear. Okay, they tried everything they could. They knew, but they couldn't overcome this storm. And then they are thinking that they are about to die in the middle of this sea. Jesus is saying that, you of little faith, why are you so afraid? Okay, what do you think? Why is Jesus rebuking his disciples at this moment? Isn't it understandable? They are seasoned fishermen, and then they know how dangerous this kind of storm is. And then they tried everything they know, but it didn't work. They knew exactly what's going to happen next. They're going to be drowned. They didn't have any other way. So that's why they got afraid. They got feared. But Jesus said to them, you of little faith, why are you so afraid? Why do you think Jesus is rebuking his disciples? Okay, what kind of guess do you have? Number one, maybe Jesus was upset because they were waking him while tired. Is it the reason why Jesus is rebuking them? As we know, the disciples didn't wake Jesus up from the beginning. They tried for themselves, but it didn't work. So eventually they woke up Jesus. So I don't think that's the reason why Jesus is rebuking these disciples. Okay, then number two, we can guess maybe, Jesus is rebuking them because they do not believe Jesus' ability, capacity. Is it the reason? How do you think? They just, right before they boarded this boat, they observed Jesus' supernatural miracles. Jesus casted out the demons and then healed all those hopeless disease. So if they are people who can have the reasoning, okay, they cannot doubt about Jesus' capacity. I don't think that's the reason why Jesus is rebuking his disciples. And then, plus, they are asking for help to Jesus. They are not asking for help toward other deities or other gods. They are asking for Jesus' help. I don't think that's the reason why they are rebuked. Okay, then number three, Cass. Okay. Are they rebuked by Jesus because they have this kind of fear? How do you think? I don't think that's the reason why they are rebuked. We are human beings. And then God and Jesus, he knows exactly how weak we are. We have this mortal body in front of the danger of death. We are caught by those kind of fear. It's natural. Yeah? I don't think that's why they are rebuked by Jesus. Then why? Why is Jesus rebuking them? What is lacking in their faith? Okay? Remember what kind of a situation they are in. They were in Galilee before. They are in what is that called? The region's name. What is it? Galilee. And then Jesus commanded them to go to the other side of the lake. Jesus commanded them. So that's why they took this boat. They were going through this lake. And in the middle of the lake, they met this sudden storm. Think about it. So Jesus is talking about disciples. My disciples, remember, you are with me in this middle of this ministry that I commanded you. Even though the storm is hopeless, even though you look like I'm ignoring you in the middle of this scary difficulty, no, you are with me. And remember, you are in the middle of this task that I commanded you. So the disciples couldn't see that. They forgot that. The one who commanded them cross over this sea, cross over this lake was Jesus. So they didn't have to be afraid of this sudden storm in the middle of it. Why? Jesus was the one who commanded them to cross the sea. That's why Jesus is rebuking them about their little faith. And then look at the last half of verse 26. Jesus got up and rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. Do you remember the story of the centurion? Okay? We learned about his story a few weeks ago. The centurion came to Jesus and then he said, "You don't have to come to my house because I have my own soldiers. Whenever I command, they obey. So Jesus, you just command. And then this disease and everything will obey you." So now Jesus is looking for that kind of faith from those disciples. They had to know, they should have known Jesus has that authority, okay, transcending time or space or anything. Okay? So now Jesus is rebuking the winds and the waves, and then it was completely calm. And the man was amazed and asked, "What kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him." Okay, we are the people who are called by God, Yuna. Wherever we go, wherever we are living in, yeah, God called us to be his own children, to be the people, okay, to bringing peace to this kingdom of God. Okay, we are called by God. So basically, we are in the boat with Jesus. We are going toward God's will together with Jesus. If you believe that fact, if you believe you are called by God, you have that kind of vocation and task from God. Okay? We don't have to be afraid of sudden storms in our lives. It happens sometimes. The disciples couldn't understand why this happened to them. Why didn't God protect the boat? Yeah? Which had Jesus and disciples together. They couldn't understand it. But sometimes it happens. Jesus rebuked the storm and the wind. Sometimes we do not exactly why, but evil spirits, they did sometimes, or by God's will. We don't know exactly why, but it happens. But what today's story teaches us, we do not have to be afraid of. Why is that so? Because we are in the middle of this way, all together with Jesus towards God's will. If you believe in that fact, sometimes you feel like you are alone. God is silent about the difficulties you are experiencing now. Like these disciples, Jesus was sleeping in that boat, in that chaos. So the disciples were kind of confused. Why? Jesus, why are you silent? Why don't you do something for us? Sometimes we feel like that. But do not think that Jesus doesn't care about us. He's with us, even in this middle of the storm. Okay? So we have to have this faith to see the big picture God is drawing, to where God is leading us. Even the people of Israel, they had to pass through the time of wilderness. Being the people of God doesn't mean we do not experience any difficulties, any insufficiency, any tasks. That's not true. Okay? Even in the middle of the wilderness, we have to have this kind of faith. Jesus is with us. We are going toward what God planned for us. Okay? So, let us wrap up today's message. Okay? So today, Jesus and then his disciples is going toward the land, actually what exactly Jesus commanded it. And in the middle of it, they met this storm. But still, Jesus is with them. They forgot at the moment. They got this kind of fear. But we have to remember the message that we get from today's passage. Okay? So let us pray all together. Remember, the message